We are back with former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti. Welcome back. Your thoughts on what emerged legally out of Mr. Navarro's latest comments?
Well, it was certainly obvious. You used the term minimize during that interview, Ari. I think that is exactly the right word. He wants to minimize. He wants to distance himself from a couple of these schemes. So what it really suggested to me is that he sees, particularly with the elector scheme, that he really wants to have no part of it. It seems to me like he's concerned about his own potential liability, trying to distance himself from his aide, trying to distance himself from that scheme, and of course the voting machine scheme.
Yeah, the electors plot is important because not only is it under criminal investigation, but although some of this is counterintuitive, people in government talking about really creative ways to file challenges or get, cooperation from Congress can be harder to prosecute. For some reasons that might be frustrating, and for some that I would note are quite valid, like the very wide berth that members of Congress have for speech and debate. If you don't like that, well, it's in the Constitution. When it comes to submitting forgeries to a government body, that's different. And so here he was just briefly on that forged elector plot. Alternate or fraudulent electors. When did you become aware of that plan?
That's not part of my remit or on my radar. My focus, Ari, was simply on the Green Bay sweep plan.
So as a prosecutor, walk us through your reaction, because when he says sweep, he's referring to the arrangements around getting the cooperation, as he put it, from members of Congress on January 6th. But it is also now known that cooperation might have been increased by the manufacturing of a fake controversy or supposedly dueling electors, which seems at least overlapping coincidentally with what he's working on. How do you look at that as an investigator?
Yeah, if you look at the first words out of his mouth to you, he said that that Green Bay sweep scheme was within the four corners of the law, was right within the straight and narrow of the law. He essentially implied that he understood that there, or at least he was surmising that there was something fishy about the elector scheme. And I agree with you, Ari, 100%. That is very much within the four corners of the sort of thing that prosecutors prosecute on a regular basis for submitting a false statement to the government. And so what it tells me is it shows me he wants to distance himself. It shows me that he thinks that, his aides who may have been closer, whether it was to the seizure of the voting machines, which is obviously questionable itself, or to this scheme, is something he wants to have nothing to do with, no part of.
He also went further, as reported, than Mark Meadows, who was loyal almost to the bitter end to what Trump wanted. Here's Mr. Meadows also battling a subpoena and speaking out.
When a lot of that was actually happening with Hillary Clinton, there was actually an investigation. There were subpoenas. There was all kinds of things going on. What they're doing, what Donald Trump is trying to look backwards and attach some kind of a relative comparison, which there is no comparison.
A kind of tortured defense of Donald Trump being accused of security breaches. But beyond the hypocrisy, you notice Meadows there says, oh, well, that was different last time because there were subpoenas. He's literally fighting one right now. And so I put to you the question that so many viewers have asked me, but you're the prosecutor. What's going to happen with the people beyond Bannon who are still fighting these subpoenas out?
I think Meadows, he has a very good lawyer who's tried to do his best to obscure the issue, make it appear that Meadows is cooperating, and make it difficult for the DOJ to prosecute. Meadows knows this. It's part of a carefully calculated defense to try to avoid prosecution. As for Navarro, it appeared to me like he thinks that he may have to testify, and that's why he wants to make sure he has nothing. He says he has nothing to do with these other schemes because he wants to narrow his testimony. I do think Meadows will eventually have to testify. The question is a race in terms of how fast the courts are going to get to a decision on that before the Congress turns over the midterms.
Clearly put, very interesting, given your expertise. Renato Mariotti, good to see you, sir.